Hello, and welcome to Principles of Microeconomics. This is Module 3, and today we're going to talk about the theory of consumer choice and deriving the demand curve. To start off with, when we think about how consumers make decisions about what they want to buy and how much they buy, we think about it in terms of how much they can afford and what their preferences are. So when we will be deriving the optimal consumption point, we will be thinking about it in terms of the budget constraint, how much consumers can afford, and indifference curves, or what we call consumer preferences. The combination of these two will allow us to reach and understand the optimal consumption point. So to start off with, let's talk about the budget constraint. A budget constraint looks at how much a consumer can afford in the purchase of two goods. It takes into consideration both the price of the goods as well as the consumer's income. So let's look at an example here. Let's suppose our friend Charlie has $100 a month to spend on the consumption of two goods, pizza and soda. The price of pizza is $10 and the price of soda is $2. So we want to know how much pizza can he buy if he spends all of his money on pizza, and how much soda can he buy if he spends all of his money on soda. The budget constraint will be a combination of his consumption of pizza and soda based on his income or allotment of income to pizza and soda each month. So as you can see here, the budget constraint is going to look at and connect the maximum points of consumption between pizza and soda. If he spends all of his $100 on soda, then he's going to consume 50 units of soda. If he spends all of his $100 on pizza, the total amount of pizza that he can consume will be 10 pizzas. So what we see is that the movement along our budget constraint is going to represent how much more pizza can he consume and how many sodas he has to give up to consume one additional unit of pizza. The slope of the budget constraint gives us the rate at which the consumer can trade one good, soda, for the other good, pizza. It gives us specifically the relative price of good X, the good on the X-axis, in terms of good Y, the good on the Y-axis. So remember, when we calculate the slope, it's the change in Y over the change in X. Another way that we can think about the slope is the slope is going to be the relative price of good X in terms of good Y. So here, the slope of our budget constraint is going to be the price of pizza divided by the price of soda. As you can see, if we look at the change in Y from 0 to 50 divided by the change in X from 0 to 10, it will give us the same slope as if we look at px over py, or 10 over 2, giving us a slope of 5. This tells us that for Charlie, if he wants to consume one more pizza, he has to give up 5 sodas. Now, the budget constraint is going to be an important consideration in deciding what a consumer consumes because it limits the consumer's consumption bundles to what they can afford. Now, we will experience two types of changes in the budget constraint. First, if there is a change in income, and secondly, if there is a change in the price of one of the goods. So for example, if Charlie's income falls to $50 per month, what does that mean for his consumption of pizza and soda? Well, if his income is now lower, and he only has $50 per month to spend on pizza and soda, then he's going to consume less soda on the maximum as well as less pizza on the maximum. So we see that the total amount and the total combination of pizza and soda that he can consume declines. So we'll have an equal shift in the budget constraint if we have an increase or decrease in income, because the consumption of both of the goods will be affected. Now, what if we have a change in the price of one of the goods? Let's say that now pizza becomes more expensive. and now it costs $12.50. So at the maximum, now he can only consume 8 pizzas if he spends all of his income, all $100, only on pizza. Okay? Still, at the maximum, if he spends only money on just soda, he can consume 50 sodas. So here what we observe is that we have a biased shift in the budget constraint. And you can see here that the new slope is going to be 625 instead of 5. So now what we observe is that pizza is more expensive in terms of soda. In other words, for 1 additional unit of pizza, he now has to give up 6.25 sodas. Now, income and the budget is not the only thing that influences what consumers want to consume. Each consumer also has their preferences for the goods and services that they want to buy. So when we think about consumer preferences, we think about this in terms of what we call indifference curves. And indifference curves are going to capture equal levels of satisfaction that a consumer derives from buying a combination of 2 goods. Here you can see an example of indifference curves. And again, we can think about this in terms of our previous example of pizza and soda. Here we have 3 indifference curves. Now, on indifference curve 1, we see that our consumer, let's say Charlie, is going to be equally satisfied at any point along indifference curve 1. So he doesn't care where he is, he gets the same level of satisfaction. Now, if he moves from indifference curve 1 to indifference curve 2, he will be happier on indifference curve 2 because he can consume more of both pizza and soda. So we see that Charlie is indifferent between consuming at point C and at point B, but he will prefer point B and C over point A. And of course, if he can reach indifference curve 3, he will be happiest and most satisfied at point D. So there are 4 key properties to indifference curves. The first, as I have just mentioned, that higher indifference curves are always preferred to lower ones. And that's because you get a higher level of satisfaction at the higher indifference curve. Also, as we observe, our indifference curves are downward sloping because to keep the same level of satisfaction, we need to consume less of one good if we are to consume more of the other. If we had upward sloping indifference curves, that would tell us that we are equally satisfied by consuming more and more of both goods, which is not true. We would be more satisfied by consuming more of both goods. Third, indifference curves can never cross. Now, remember, to the previous example that we had, we see that indifference curve 3 will always be preferred to indifference curve 2. This tells us that D will always be preferred to B or C. If they cross, for example, we have indifference curve 2 and let's say indifference curve 3, well, this is going to tell us that point A should be equally satisfying as point B, and point C should be equally satisfying as point B. But clearly, A is better than C. So if indifference curves cross, then we get mixed messages about exactly what a consumer prefers. So our indifference curves will never cross. And lastly, our indifference curves are bowed inward because the amount that we are willing to give away depends on the abundance of the good. So if we have a lot of pizza already, we are more willing to give up a little bit of that pizza to gain more soda. Now, if we have almost no pizza, but a lot of soda, we don't want to give up more pizza for more soda. It is relatively scarce in terms of soda. So therefore, to capture that, we see that our indifference curves are bowed inward.